Hey y'all, I'm Lily O'Reilly. This is Lily O'Reilly Reviews, and you can find me online at allmylinks.com/Lily O'Reilly. Now today we're going to be discussing consent in BDSM and kink circles. Let's get to it. Okay, so this is one of those topics that is incredibly in-depth. I was commissioned by a Ko-Fi commissioner to try to tackle the very large topic of consent in BDSM and kink. If you haven't already, please go back and watch, at minimum, my Consent 201 video. At best, you should watch 101 and 201. The absolute finest bottom line that I can pull is consent in a nutshell means that someone has to understand exactly what they're agreeing to. They have to agree without any sort of pressure or repercussions if they say no, and they have to be in agreement actively for the entire time that the thing is going on. If you don't have those three compartments, you don't have consent. Your activities are not consensual. Now, kink, roughly speaking, is a term that is a giant umbrella, kind of like queer. Kink just means it's not vanilla. This can cover everything from fairly normal fetishes like foot fetish. That's a mild kink, generally. All the way to people who want to practice like consensual amputations. That is also kink, however, that is like the opposite end of the spectrum. That end of the spectrum, kinks that are considered more dangerous, go by a name called edge play. People who participate in them are edge players. Edge play includes things like piercing, knife play, asphyxiation, strict mummification, some forms of predicament bondage. Anything that could particularly cause damage to the person it is being done to, or the bottom. Very quick terms if you don't know. The bottom is the person on whom the activity is being done. The top is the person doing the activity. BDSM scrambles out into a lot of different words, but basically, bondage is being restrained. Dominance is having someone tell you what to do, generally more mental. Submission is taking orders and deriving pleasure from doing them. But the S also stands for sadism, which is enjoying consensually hurting people. And then you have masochism, which is enjoying being hurt. It's a lot, but we are going to try to boil this down to easy, simple 101 stuff. So how do you take these three components of consent and apply them to kink? Well, all of those points about how somebody needs to know exactly what is going to be happening to them, and they need to know there's no repercussions for saying no, and they need to consent for the whole time, these are all even more important when you're talking about kink. Because within each particular kink, let's talk about needles, because I don't know, it's the first one I thought of. If I say to you, hey, I want to do some needle play, do you want to? And you say yes, without asking what kind of needles, what gauge, or what size, where do you want to put them, how long will they be in, are you going to poke them and twist them once they're in there? These are all questions that need to be discussed. Now, there are things out there like negotiation lists. I use one called Kink's List that's pretty good. You go down a very, very, very long, but still not exhaustive list of items, and you mark, do I like this? Have I tried this? Do I want to do this? How experienced am I with this? Do I like it a lot, a little? Do I dislike it? Do I dislike it so much that I would stop the sex and leave if someone did it to me? There's a whole spectrum. And then you take your list, and the person you want to play with takes their list, and you sit down and you hash out, okay, I see that I like these 5 things and so do you, so let's play with them. How do you like them and how can we put them together to make them fun? But Lily, that's not sexy. A, suck it up, buttercup. B, it can be. Like, ideally you're doing this with someone where you can have these conversations via email, or you can sit down over coffee and you can have a really long discussion. But I've also had these negotiations on the fly at play parties where it's like, hey, give me your top 3 kinks. And if they match mine, I'm like, cool. Here's what I would like to do with this. Does this sound cool to you? Okay, cool. Sweet, you got a scene. It doesn't take that long. Now, there's a lot to take in there. You need to understand what you want them to do, what they want to do. Ideally, you also need to kind of know how long they've been doing it if you're going to play with edge play. Let's roll it back a little and let's talk about something super soft and simple like spanking. Spanking is something that happens a lot in even vanilla relationships because like porn has made it so normalized that the amount of guys that will hit me on the ass without asking, it's kind of rude, you know? But that's the consent thing. So, let's say that you've agreed to do a spanking scene with someone. You as the top or the bottom. And you're spanking and they're enjoying it and you get halfway through and you notice that they're getting kind of floaty. They're really having a great time, but they're not responding as fast. Did I break them? Probably not. A lot of bottoms, especially masochist bottoms, get into a headspace that's called subspace. And it's where the endorphins and the experience almost make you feel as though you're high. The problem with subspace, like subspace is super cool. It's a lot of why bottoms and submissives do what they do is because you get this great floaty, floofty feeling afterwards. The downside is you have to treat that person like they're impaired. You cannot renegotiate consent in a scene with someone that is experiencing subspace because they are inebriated, functionally. They're typically in a more suggestible state. They're more likely to agree to things that they don't maybe really want to do when they're sober, but when they're subspacey, they're like, fuck yes, do that thing to me that I don't like. And if you do that thing that they don't like because they like subtly agreed to it, there's a good chance that when they come out of that, they're going to regret it. And they're going to have negative feelings attached to you. And you, and I, as a top, I don't want that. So, especially with people who drop hard and who get into subspace quickly, do not renegotiate mid-scene. It is one thing if I'm having a scene with somebody and neither one of us has gotten into an altered mind space. Mid-scene, if they're like, hey, would you like to try like bastonado where you smack them on the feet? And I go, sure, I've got the tools for it. Let me know if it gets too intense. That's fine. I'm not negotiating with somebody who's all woozy in the brain pan. Now, speaking of saying no, a lot of people who are into kink will come up with either a safe word, and a safe word is very simple. It is something that would not be said during sex, like tapioca, armadillo, pincushion. And that way, if they say that, you know that that is a drop everything, okay, what's up, are you all right? It's a literal drop the flag, timeout moment. Another system is to use a color system. I've used this a lot if I'm playing with somebody that I don't know super well. Red is a stop. If I yell red on either end of it, drop everything, we are done. Take the scene down, we quit, we're out. Yellow is something's off, check in with me. It might be the bottom going, hey, my hands are going numb and they shouldn't be. Or, hey, my leg's getting ready to cramp. I need out of this position. Or just, hey, you hit me with a thing I don't like, so like stop with that thing. Green means we are go. So if I check in, I'm like, hey, how you doing? And they say green, it's an okay, pat, pat, we continue. Some color people will also use blue. Blue means I enjoy what we're doing. Please give me more intensity of it, which I think is a really cool addition. Safe words are great. Like, I use them all over the place. They are particularly important, though, when you are playing with something called consensual non-consent. Now, consensual non-consent is edge play. It is a situation in which no does not mean no. I am not going to get into any of the psychosocial background of what makes people into CNC, but I accept it as a legitimate fetish. Now, safe words are super, super important in this because you always need a way to bail out if it is too much. I don't care what anyone tells you. I especially don't care if some top is telling you that it's not really consensual non-consent if you can back out. Whatever. You as the bottom need the ability to pull the ripcord and get out of the situation if it feels like it's going to be damaging for you mentally or physically. Now, with something like CNC where you can say no, and you can try to push them away, and you can struggle, and the intent is to be overpowered or overwhelmed, you have to pre-negotiate. You have to pre-negotiate the shit out of it. Everything you can possibly think of. You need to let them know what is and is not okay. Now, some people will tell you it's not real CNC if the top can't do everything they want to do. They can go sit on a cactus. You don't get to give up your base humanity and care for another person just because you're doing a specialized kind of kink play with them. So you negotiate everything. I, as a top, when I am doing CNC with someone, I don't stray from the things that we've negotiated. If I get the random thought halfway through that, hey, I want to hold them down and take a Q-tip and take all the earwax out of their ears, and we didn't talk about that, I don't do that because I'm not an asshole and it isn't on the table. I stick to the things that I know their likes or dislikes, and you can still have a super intense and very gratifying scene without potentially damaging the person that's trusting you to hurt them. See? There's nuance there. Now, I am bouncing around all over the place, and it's very difficult because I'm taking a massive amount of information and trying to pack it down into essentially a carry-on. At this point, we're sitting on the lid trying to stuff everything in. So I'm going to end on a very important point. Actually, I'm going to shove one quick thing in before we seal it. 1, choking is edge play. I do not know what to make of all of these people who are ostensibly vanilla that I see with like the hands tied around the throat. And I get it, it's a kink. It's not my kink, but whatever. The problem is, guys, if you are putting your hand on someone's throat and you don't know what you're doing, you can crush their trachea. You can collapse their windpipe and they can fucking die. Cool? This is even worse if you are restricting them with something like a belt that you're holding on to. You can't control the pressure you're putting on the front of their throat and it can collapse. If somebody wants me to do a video, I will attempt to do a video on how to do breath play kind of safely, but it's edge play. There is no safe way, not really, to do breath play because if they have an underlying heart or a lot of other conditions, you can set it off by trying to smother them. So, there's that. So, last minute red flags that you need to know about if you're going to play with somebody, and these are things that I think you should drop the whole convo and GTFO. Ready? 1, and these apply as a top or a bottom, whatever side of it you're on. If you hear the words, no limits, GTFO, it's not worth it. 1, if you are topping and your bottom attempts to tell you, I have no limits, that means that dumbass has not thought about their limits. I have had many people come to me, I don't have any limits. Okay, can I cut your toe off and put it in a jar? Lo and behold, the asshole suddenly grows a limit. It is amazing. Now, as a bottom especially, if you are talking to a top or a dominant, whatever, and they attempt to tell you that you are not allowed to have any limits when you play with them, please pack all your shit up. I don't care how hot they are, and I don't care if their dick's long enough that you can wear it as a scarf. you leave. Do not trust anyone that tells you you are never allowed to have limits, because everyone has them. They're natural. They're healthy. We need them to function. 2, anybody that gets too familiar too fast. As a top, if somebody comes up to you and immediately starts calling you master or mistress or goddess or lord or whatever it is, it's bullshit. Don't trust it. You haven't earned it. Now, that might just mean they're trying to snooker you in because they want to get whatever it is that they want out of you. Whatever. Most often, what I've noticed is it means that they are not interested in you. They are interested in the version of master or mistress or goddess or whatever it is that they've built in their head, and they want to shove you into that mold. And you're not going to fit, and there's going to be discrepancies, and they're going to get pissed off. It's just not worth it. You want to engage with people who can interact with you as a person, and when you're interacting as equals, you discuss the things you want to do. And then, once you're built that base plate of here are what we like and here's where we connect, then you decide on the lord and the mistress and the whatever it is that you want to layer on top of that. But there has to be a basis of human to human equal communication. Otherwise, it's not worth bunk. Similarly, if you as a submissive have somebody that starts coming up to you, all right, slave, you need to send me, underwear shots or whatever. No, they haven't earned it. Being a submissive or being a bottom or being whatever little role you are does not take away your ability to say no, to have preferences, and to make them damn earn the right to be your dominant, top, whatever. Cool? Cool. Other problems. 3, are they too pushy? This goes right along with the too fast. But if they're pushing you to scene, or if they're pushing you to play, or if they're pushing you to do an activity that they don't, you don't want to do, but they want to do. Anything. If there's any point at which you dig your feet in and they keep pulling, bail out. Because in a scene, in a moment when you need to say no, they're going to try to tell you that you can't. And that's not worth it. You deserve better. So, at any point, on any side, if somebody gets too pushy about shit, back up, bail out, give them a chance to do better, maybe, but mostly I just pack my shit and go. Because at that point, they have made it very clear that they don't respect what I'm bringing to the table enough to treat me proper. Similarly, if they disregard your preferences, if you tell them something and they continually forget, especially if they're forgetting because it's something they want to do that you don't want to do, bail out. It's not worth the hassle of attempting to communicate with somebody that doesn't want to listen. And this goes both directions, because tops can have limits too. But if you bring up something that you're uncomfortable with and they just forget, and then next time bring it up oh, of course you'll be okay with it, pack your bags and bail. Just not worth it. Just not. There are so many people out there that are into kink. It's no longer a tiny isolated community. It's people all over the place. There will always be more people who have your kink. I promise. That's what the internet is for. You don't have to settle for somebody that could potentially hurt you just because you feel like they're the only option you got. Alright, so that was a big, giant, messy 101 rundown of me stuffing information in a duffel bag for you guys. Let me know if it made sense. Let me know if there are bits that I should elaborate on, and I will absolutely do a follow-up video. And overall, thank you for coming here and wanting to talk about this and wanting to have these kind of conversations so you can do this stuff with a modicum more safety and care. So, real quick, if you want to find me online, allmylinks.com/Lily O'Reilly. If you want to throw me $3 on Ko-Fi, $25 to commission a video, ko-fi.com/Lily O'Reilly. And now I am going to take my coffee and we're off. Bye, guys.